Soul, a podcast for a better you. Your host, Steve Hudgens, is a licensed professional counselor. On a non-emergency basis, you may contact them at area code 918-280-8690 or coachsoul.com to provide them with new topics, feedback, or to request an appearance on the show. And now, here's your host, Steve Hudgens.
Hey, welcome back. And Kenny, what a lovely, I love to play on the words that we just did here because you ended the podcast with love because we talked about Thanksgiving. I don't know about you, but I think I ate too much and overstuffed myself like a turkey usually on Thanksgiving. You know, we blame the turkey for making us sleepy, and it's not really the turkey, even though it has tryptophan in it. It is your digestive system can't handle the food, the starch, the protein, and everything else that we put in it all at once. Our
And the
body
pies.
is not made, right? Oh, but gosh, my favorite pie of the year was pumpkin and pecan. And then my grandmother would occasionally make this coconut cream pie. And I love coconut cream pie. And I miss that. I miss my other grandmother who would make pecan pie or a pumpkin pie. At one time, I think she made a sweet potato pie. You know, in the holidays, it becomes hard when you miss family members about this time of the year. And you know, what do you think makes it so difficult for us to get into a holiday and all of a sudden we have a memory that triggers us? And how do we stop from triggering? Maybe we need to back up just a little bit before I go there.
Yeah. I was thinking, let's give it a backstory.
Yeah, let's give it a backstory. You know, what are some favorite things that you remember about favorite people or family members in your life that made the holidays special?
So I mentioned the last episode, my grandmother. My grandmother, because she was my mom's mom, but truly she was my mother figure because my father wasn't there and my mama was working 3 jobs from birth. I don't remember one day growing up without my grandmother taking me and my sister everywhere, to gymnastics, to music, to piano, to school. And I mean by bus, not driving, in Brazil. So when she passed away, and this is 2019, it was a series of unfortunate events. And I really don't want to get into the details because I don't have permission to share that. But let's just say that the person that was taking care of her buried her. And I found out through social media when she had passed, after she was already under dirt. So I didn't even know I knew she was sick. She was 92, but I didn't know that she had had a heart attack. I didn't know all the things that led to it. So I developed actually thyroid, what I thought was cancer or a thyroid issue because my throat swollen. Now knowing what I know of energy, so it's like I was clogged up with anger and I had a lot to say. I just wanted, like, it was all the things, and resentment, like guilt, like she took care of me and I didn't have a chance to take care of her. And I want to say this out loud because yes, with small children, they keep you busy, but it's not like I would never not miss her. So during the holidays, yes, of course, I'm here. I'm full-blown mama, and her seat is empty. And it will always be empty in actuality, never empty in my heart. But it's not like I can sit here and say, I don't miss her. Or, oh, everything is okay, we're busy. I mean, she was a great cooker. She was a great cook, not cooker. She was a great cook. She was so loving. She was so present. She was my grandmother. And every time I had a child, she came to America. She spent a year with me. She helped me with the newborn. So I have this core memories with her growing up as a child, and then in this new season of a mom, and her helping me to nurse, to change diapers. I mean, she was so there for me. And I get to forgive myself for not being able to be there for her. And I get to live every holiday without her. And then it's really hard. And I don't fake it. I be with it. I think your question was, what do you do? I honor her. I have pictures of her out. I say stories about her. I honor her. I bring her to the table even though she's not there. I'm always grateful for her. And I share some memories out loud to keep her beauty alive so my kids would know stories about her. So that's how I honor her life.
That's a legacy that
Yes.
oftentimes we forget about, passing our story down. You know, that's one of the things I enjoy about the Native American culture is that, and I'm sure that all cultures have it, but you tell stories through songs sometimes, or you pass down in generation the story of somebody great within the family to keep that legacy alive.
Yes.
And you know, hearing what you were sharing with me in regard to your grandmother, we have some similarities here. My grandfather died in 2000 of a massive heart attack, and he was 82. And that was difficult because that was my mentor of a father figure for me, because I don't remember the day that he did not read his Bible. He would drink his coffee, and I'm talking about this coffee was either hot, lukewarm, cold. It didn't matter. He drank it throughout the day. That was just him, a great memory. And then my grandmother, you know, lived 20 something years after that. And she was 98 when she passed away. I was fortunate to see her in 2019 prior to COVID. This is when COVID was coming out. We didn't understand it. I flew to Atlanta because it was my mom's sister and her husband, their only child that's a doctor at Georgia Tech, is there. So they brought my grandmother from New Mexico to Atlanta, Georgia. Able to see her fly back. And in 2021, I always called her. Didn't matter. I tried to call her every week, sometimes twice a week, just to check in to see how she was doing, because I knew how lonely it was. And when I talked to her on a Monday, things were fantastic. Then I get a text from my mother on Friday that my grandmother had passed away at 12:40 in the morning. And that impacted me. And I said, so I allowed a couple of days, and then I called my mother and I said, I am sorry for Memo and her passing.
Well, I'm so
How
sorry.
did she pass away? And she said, my grandmother had slipped and fell, and she passed away in her sleep. If that's the way to go, that is the way to go, is to pass away and sleep. And I love to think that they're both in heaven dancing and doing whatever they're doing in heaven, being joined together and just enjoying one another. But the impact, when we think about family and holidays, we hold that specialness of that missing family member.
Yeah.
But then you have the dark side. At least for me, it was dark, and possibly dark for you when you didn't know.
Just legit grief. Sure.
Correct. But grief is also impacted by a selfishness. And that's the way I view it, as selfishness by my mother. Because they cremated my mother. It's too expensive to cross state boundaries with a body, to fly it or to cross it. So they cremated my grandmother. They did not tell me when they were going to bury her. I remember on social media the events that there was pictures and things like that, and I'm like, how come I wasn't told? And so every year I have to look at about this time, because it was in October when my grandmother passed away. She was 98. I have to remember not to hold resentment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yes, there is some friction between my mother and I, but we shared a commonality of her mother.
Yeah.
So where I want to take this here, Kenya, is sometimes when we get into some people lose family members around this time of the holiday years and things of
Yes.
that nature. When you talk about frequency of grief and things of that nature, what would you say that would help um, our listeners to understand? Yes, it's okay to grieve,
Yeah.
but what's not okay is getting stuck in that mode and not coming out of it.
Well, I want to go one level deeper because I don't think no
Sure.
one here wants to be stuck. You just don't know how to move grief.
Mm.
Just like if you don't know how to move any energy, um, guilt, anger, sadness, it goes deeper. So I heard a lot in what you said, but let me answer this question first about the grief. My invitation is that if you're hearing this and you lost a loved one and you already know based on the past that you will get triggered around the holidays, that you will miss it and that would affect you, don't do it alone. Don't do it alone. Take a bestie with you. Call someone. How could you show up differently? What could you do today on Thanksgiving? What could you do this week to help to channel that emotion? Maybe it's to bring more stories out to the table. Maybe it's to journal. Maybe it's to look at their pictures and to cry.
Mm.
Give a voice to the feeling. Don't shovel down. Do you happen to know the amount of people that actually don't grieve? Because
There's a lot.
you know what I'm saying? Like grieving is not just crying. It might be welling, punching your pillow. There's so many layers of it. And I remember that when grandmother passed, and she had a very similar story to you. The person that was taking care of her buried her, did all the things. It had a rub with my mom, had a bad relationship with my mom, so it didn't communicate with us when she was out. I literally didn't know I had so much anger in my body. Like, how can a human do this with another human? So it was grief mixed up with guilt, mixed up with resentment, mixed up with anger. It was all of it. Now, my invitation to you as you hear is if you relate, please just see you in us, see you in me, and don't make it wrong to have all the feelings. What's happening with the flare up is because all those energies has been shoveled down so you can survive, so you can live another day, so you can go to work. So maybe if you show up more tender this week, have a clearing conversation with yourself. Maybe write a letter for this person, your loved one that left. Write a love letter. Because you see, what grief is the emotion in its core, deep down, is I love you so much. I was never ready to be in this life without you. That's
One
what
of the
grief.
things. Well, I'm glad you said about a letter because it jogged my memory. Gestalt therapy talks about the empty chair, and I take it a little step further. When I was inpatient, and there was one that was dealing with grief, the loss of her father, she was angry,
Yeah.
very bitter, and she became self-harming. And one of the things that we did is I asked her to write a letter to her father, who had passed away, and the impact of her was that she was also a beautician. And she went in, even though she had a rough relationship with her father, he was in prison and he died. And she asked to take care of his body. In other words, she combed his hair. She put makeup on him to
Wow.
make him look alive. And that impacted her a lot more than she realized. And I asked her to write this letter. We went outside in this little open area that we were able to go into when we were inpatient, and she began to read it. I was playing the voice of her father, so to speak, And then I took the lighter and I lit the letter, and it went up in smoke. And I said, your father just received this letter because it smoked. And he's a soul, and he's able to read, and he heard you, he validates you. That helped her more than anything. And I think, I know, if we're able to write our letters, if you don't have somebody to do it with you, find somebody to do it with you. I think is very impactful. Read it out loud. Take a lighter, and
100%.
and just
Well,
let it go.
for me, Steve, after I move past the anger, and I could tell that what I was really feeling is I miss her so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to be there for her the way she was there for me. And I didn't even know she was sick. So I could not even hop in a plane and go help. So when my sister came to visit, because grandmother raised the both of us, during the holidays, it was Thanksgiving, I believe it was Thanksgiving 2019. I went for a hike with my sister, and we had 2 balloons. We went and we bought 2 balloons from the dollar store, and I had a permanent marker. And we wrote this letter for grandma in the balloon, and we cried, and we said all the things that I don't even remember, but it was a mix of everything, of grief. I'm sorry. I love you so much. Thank you for everything. It was all of it. And after we spoke we wrote a few keywords. Not that you can write an entire letter in a balloon, but it was like a few keywords, and we let it go. And it was so healing. Because in this body, what Steve is saying, listeners, what I am saying is that as a human, a glass of water means something. When you can touch something means something. When you write something, it's what we call 3D. When things are materialized and you can see it, your human feels complete. The soul doesn't care for none of it, but we are here. So for us to come up with what ritual will support you, what tools will support you in this season, pick and choose. There's no right or wrong.
When I think about,
get a voice to this love, get a voice to this grief, get it out of you in a way of a letter, a balloon, speaking out loud.
Well, even going to therapy helps too, because
100%.
if you don't have somebody that you can trust and open up to, it's being able to find a therapist that can help you walk through that process. And the other scope of things too is for family members to allow that person to grieve. We shouldn't say, oh, get over it. It's okay. No. It's been 3 years since they've been gone. You shouldn't still be grieving. Everybody grieves it a little differently. And we need to hold space for that person who's still grieving. And go ahead.
Well, a couple of things. There's layers of griefs. So I don't think we're ever done grieving. It energy transforms. Love transforms into grief, and transforms into gratitude, and transforms. And then at some point you won't be triggered anymore, but you still shed a tear because of love, and it's okay. And for all parents out there, if you can grieve in front of your kids and normalize, this is how grief, healthy grief, looks like. It is the most beautiful ritual, if you will. I remember telling my kids, Mama feels really sad, and now Mama feels really angry. It's like, Mommy, how can you hold? She doesn't say hold, but it's like, how can you feel all of it at the same time? It's like, it's grief, honey. It comes in layers. So at some point now, my kids know that when you grieve, you allow all of it to visit you, and you don't make it wrong. And I even close the bathroom door, and I say, I'm going to take a shower, and I'm just going to cry, and I'll probably cry a lot loud. If you hear me screaming, I'm okay. But that's how I move through it. And I continue to when it hits me.
Just a thought just occurred to me out of curiosity, Kenya. We're all human beings, and we deal with emotion differently. I know in America, sometimes we tend to push down, don't deal with our feelings and emotions. What is it like in the Latino community? Do they do the same thing, that we just don't face our emotions? Do we just do a little differently?
So
What
I love this
happens?
question. I love this question. I'm going to say that as a culture, we're much more expressive, which doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
healthy. Like I
Mm.
remember a lot of yelling in the house. I remember marrying my husband and my mom coming to visit, and he thinks that we're having an argument in the kitchen. We were just talking.
Right.
Are you guys okay? It's like, yeah, no, that's just how we talk. Very loud, very all of it. And but as a music therapist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm a therapist too, and now sound healer and now energy healer, what I understand is that through somatics, which is the movement between the body and the voice, and that's how you express, that's actually how your body is created to move
Mm-hmm.
energy. So now I am just aware and I verbalize that, so my husband and my kids know that mom is not having a heart attack. Mom is just screaming and, you know, crying, ugly cry. And I don't want to do that in front of you. But if you hear, I am okay. So I do it intentionally. And
And I
sometimes I cry in front of them and I say, Mommy, why are you crying? It's like, I actually don't know. I just really feel like crying.
and to me, that's a healthy way of helping teaching your children how to deal with these emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times we, for some reason, the Western mind here, we just don't want to deal with
No.
emotion. We don't
And
want to
especially men,
confront.
Steve. I really want to
Yes,
speak because I have two
yes.
boys. I have two boys. It's a worldwide this idea that men don't cry, okay? It's not
Mhm.
Latino, it's not American. So for my boys, I actually go really needy and greedy down to an emotional chart. I have in my refrigerator an emotional chart. How are you feeling today? What's going on? So I train them to have the language of, I'm just not feeling like being social right now. I was like, okay,
Mm.
do you want to be alone for a while? Like, yeah. Will you let me know when you're complete? Yeah. So I know to not bother him. It's very important for even a young boy to have a long time to
Mhm.
process. He likes processing by himself. But I told him, I don't want this to become a habit that you need to deal with your things on your own, because you don't. And somehow society told me, parent, good job. You did it all by yourself. Good job. So we praise our kids to do things on their own, as if accepting support and love, especially boys, it's wrong. And it's not.
You know, we are. I like to look at life that our grandparents, you and I, we're on loan from God. We're on a loan, and what I mean by alone, alone, a and then space LOAN, like a
LOL.
bank note alone,
Yep.
right?
Alone.
We're just on borrowed time.
Mm-hmm.
And what is we got about 3 or 4 minutes left. And one thing that irks me, even as a Christian, I don't like the term, well, it was their time to go. Well, God must need them in heaven. And it's like, I don't see God operating that way, because we have the naturality of life that just happens sometimes. We have carnal people that take the time they murder. And when I dated it's going to sound funny. I dated an atheist. Well, what's a Christian doing dating an atheist? Well, why are you judging me? I learned a lot from her
True.
because she ran in the Boston Marathon. And I said, I said, God must have really watched out over you. And she got really angry.
Mm.
How is it that he saved my life, but 4 blocks down the road when that bomb went off, that the 8-year-old boy died?
Mm.
Why? And that really resonated with me about how do we speak to people who are grieving, who lost loved ones, and things of
Mm.
that nature. Again, with you, love covers a lot of things.
But is and
And Go ahead.
Steve, to her point, I love her authenticity. That's how
Yes.
we learn from each other.
Yes.
It's so easy to agree and do a shut up. Oh yeah, thank God. The lingo. No, it's not okay. And there's a lot of things I don't understand. And maybe
Mhm.
for some people it was time to go. I do have a belief of 100% guidance, right? I have a bestie in town in Nashville, and she was told that her baby was not going to be normal. Normal.
Mhm.
So she was giving the option to now go full term with the pregnancy, and she chose to believe. And the baby was full term, and his lungs was not developed. He had several issues, and he lived less than an hour. I want to say 40 minutes. It might have been less. And you tell me. So there's a lot of things that we don't have answer for. This little
Correct.
soul came and ran right back. We don't know what we don't know. So I do choose to believe in divine guidance. Whatever you want to call the divine guidance, I call it God, the creator of all things. You might call it the source, the universe. It's fine. I don't think that God has a preference. Now, what
I
does it mean
think
to you? Does it give you more? Does it give you more grace? Does it expand your heart more? Or does it make you bitter? Because let me tell you here, this is your experience. This is not about religion. We're going to take
correct.
spirit of religion out, and we're going to just trade in,
Mhm.
replace with this is your human experience.
Right.
How are you experiencing? How are you living? How are you giving? My grandmother never had one day of school in her life. And she would say, if you don't live to give, you're not made to live. Something I'm translating in
Mm.
from Portuguese, but it's something like your entire life is about loving and serving. That was her definition of life. And you know what, Steve? At 45, I agree with her. My
And
human experience is here to love and to serve.
we're running out of time, and it's about holding space for one another, allowing emotion to come out. And during this difficult time of holidays where we remember the good times, that's what helps me, is to remember the fun times, the good
Yes.
times, even though there might have been some adversity. It's looking at it with love and being able to accept, again,
Yeah,
accept where you are, who you are, whose you are,
that's right.
and being able to enjoy the holidays of the gift giving so that we can keep on living. I kind of like that statement.
Mm-hmm.
So until next time, God.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope to have you back next week. Until then, be safe and be kind.